I served my apprenticeship in the Navy as a fitter and machinist, and after I'd finished my time in the Navy looking around for my next vocation, I transitioned into boat building. So I was enjoying being a boat builder for a time, and that introduced me to the fiberglass industry. As a consequence of that, I was approached in Newcastle by a company that was at the time making fiberglass pools to assist them in their manufacturing process. So I had to weigh up whether I wanted to remain a boat builder or I'd be a subcontract fiberglass pool manufacturer. I took the road of the fiberglass pool manufacturing industry, and it didn't take long to work out that that was a lot easier road than being a boat builder. Like, being a boat builder is a labour of love. There's thousands and thousands of hours in a boat, whereas in a pool you can pull it down to 40 hours to manufacture a fiberglass pool shell. So that was 1979, and by 1980 we'd established our own company with my initial partners, and that was 34 years ago. When I think about it, I was 30 years old. And when you're 30 years old, you're bulletproof. You'll take on anything. So was it a big deal to try and find a location, council approval, employees? No. So amazingly, we managed to establish ourselves in a relatively small establishment that had previously been retreading tyres. So the walls and the floor and the office was full of carbon dust. So the first 2 weeks was cleaning up what had been a tyre retreading plant, rebuilding the office, painting the walls, setting up a spray booth. But out of that establishment, we basically were making 4 pills a day. In fact, what actually happened was, amongst my friends and known associates in the boat building industry, the word got around that I was going to make a range of pools. So my regular visitors in the first months were friends saying, "What are you doing?" and "We'll have one of them." So I actually had orders for 50 pools before I'd made one. It really took 4 or 5 months before we were able to make and deliver pools. And by the time I'd got through my 50 friends, I thought, well, we have to find a better market than just your friends. And this was, given Newcastle was 100 miles north of Sydney. One of the major retailers of pools in Sydney at the time was a wonderful chap named Johnny Murdoch, and he was the original person that created Tranquility Pools in Sydney, which is a big company. John was an Irishman, as canny as they come. He saw me walking through the door. I told him that I had a range of pool shells, and would he like to buy them? He suggested that he might, but how much money what would they cost? I gave him a number, and he went, I'm not too sure about that, I better come and look. So he drove up to Newcastle a week later. We've got the factory immaculate, and the moulds are there shining, and there's a couple of the pool shells that we've spent days making look just right. He said, "Tell me about that price again." So I pitched the price again along the basis that I'd really double checked all the figures and I could take another $150 off. And he said, "Well, here's the deal. I'll buy 100 pools, but it's got to be $1,000 more than the price you're quoting me." So after I got over my total shock and confusion and asked John why, he said, "Because you're going to go broke before you get started if you're going to sell pools for that price." And he taught me an amazingly valuable lesson. It isn't about, you've got to make a profit to stay in business. So I put that one down to John Murdoch, and he was true to his word. He took 100 pools a year. By then we were getting phone calls from other people that had found out about our existence, and the business was built on the back of a dealer network. And that really prevailed for the better part of the next 20 years. It was all about, we would get inquiries of someone potentially wanting to be a dealer. If we could fit their need and they could fit our criteria, we would establish a dealership. It really stayed that way for a long time. But as the industry, what did change? The baby boomers got older, the backyards got smaller, the red tape got thicker, to stay in business got harder. So the last decade or so, there hasn't been people ringing us saying, can we be one of your dealers? To the contrary, as a manufacturer, we've had to work really hard to keep the dealers, to make the dealer a successful business in its own right. You've got to fight. We fight every day to make our dealer network stronger, and that's the manufacturing process has been a very interesting evolution. Back in the 70s and the early 80s, best practice was accepted to be Lloyd's of London boat building standards. I brought them to the pool industry. They didn't require the use of the more highly chemical resistant resins like the vinyl ester resins that our industry uses today. So with the best of intentions and the best practices and the best materials of the day, I don't think it took 3 years before we saw osmosis in our fiberglass pools. And that was a nemesis that I very much wanted to remove from not only our business but from the pool industry. So by 1985, say 5 years into the exercise, we discovered that vinyl ester resin was a necessity, and we were using an amount of it in the initial stages of production. Allegedly that was going to solve all the problems associated with osmosis, and let's just say it didn't. It certainly put them off. It was a longer time frame before the phone rang and someone would suggest that, what are these unsightly marks in my pool? And in those days, the warranties, all manufacturers all around the globe, in fact Europe and the States and Australia, the warranties on the pools were 10 years. You know, so fundamentally if someone had a problem with a pool that was more than 10 years old, it was a bit of, well, we'll do our best to help you along the way here, but that's not warranty. That took us into the early 90s. So we've now been in business 12, 13 years, and we were building pools under an Australian standards mark scheme where there was NADA laboratory tested results of panels, and you would have thought you were bulletproof. But along comes the osmosis bug, big time, catches out not only Compass Pools, but a well-known manufacturer doing a good job at the time was International Pools, and some of the West Australian lads. We all got caught up in the osmosis syndrome all over again. But this time our manufacturing was mature enough to have a record base behind it that we could fight. So we took the resin manufacturers to the Supreme Court. It was a landmark case. I think it was the first time anyone in the world ever won a case against a major resin manufacturer, because they're big companies like Huntsman and as it was known at the time in Australia, Monsanto. They were Kerry Packer and John Huntsman. They were big time Charlies in that sector. Anyway, to win that battle, where they had the high ground, they had the money, that basically they could just keep us in court until we went broke. They had all the professors that could pose all the questions to ask where in fact you would never find the root cause. And so we transitioned in a way. We had to get our own experts. We had to understand the chemistry to stay in this case. And in the end, it was settled out of court. When they were going to lose, they were more than happy, through their insurers, to settle the matter out of court. And all we really wanted was to make our customers happy. So we actually undertook, I think from memory, about 250 pools that we resurfaced back in the mid-90s. But it's the old story, every cloud's got a silver lining. And in our case, the cloud was obviously the 2 years in court, but the silver lining was the understanding of how the chemistry really worked. So we were able to apply our knowledge, understanding that vinyl ester was the key, being a more chemically resistant raw material. However, there was other factors that cause osmosis. You know, your manufacturing techniques, water-soluble materials, air left in the laminate, too cold, too hot, product going off too slow, too fast. There's plenty of reasons outside of the actual resins. So as we evolved from the court case, we were committed to building a fiberglass composite pool that would not get osmosis, or at least to the best of our ability and knowledge, it would not get osmosis. That's what created the chemistry behind the ceramic core. Having achieved that, we were able to offer a warranty that was 20 years. Now, as we all know, most of our industry today work on 25 or even 35-year warranties, which is a good thing. You know, if Compass Pools lifted the bar for the fiberglass industry worldwide, then that's a legacy I will take away with me, because they all do a great job now. I don't know of one fiberglass pool manufacturer that's not building a pretty good product.
Australian or
in Australia, and Compass has had a major influence on both the American and European markets. There is Compass Pools Europe that build the same pool we do here under licence. They're 10 years old, and the ceramic composite technology was exported to Viking Pools in the States. They eventually ended up making nearly 4,000 pools a year over there before, just prior to the GSC, the company was sold. The other issue was that the market was still dominated really by concrete pools, and perhaps deservedly so. Their history up to that point is they'd evolved with their pebble-crete technology, so they were no longer marble sheen and white or pale blue. They were multicoloured with their pebble tech technology, and they were dominant in the market, and they sold pools for the right price. Or they certainly sold pools for more money than your average fiberglass pool was being sold for at the time. So we decided that they were the segment of the marketplace that we wanted to go after. We didn't need to take business off the fiberglass sector. We wanted to take some business back from the concrete sector. So I looked at their product and thought, how can we make our pool look like that? And we developed, and it was additionally a part of our patent, but the pebble tech technology in composite pools, which is all the chip gel coats you see today, we pioneered that also in 94, 95. So by the mid-90s, our pools looked like concrete pools, deliberately so. The part of the market we went after was the concrete sector. And we were going okay with it until we got the luckiest break known to man. I'd travelled to the States to show Viking Pools how it all worked. We'd made pools in their factory in California and taken them to Phoenix to what was then the NSPI annual show. While they were on display in Phoenix, one of the major players in the States, home base being Phoenix, was Paddock Pools, and they also owned Paramount Pool products. And the president of that's Buzz Giz. And Buzz Giz and his two vice presidents looked at these pool shells and said, what are they? We ain't seen nothing like that before. Go and talk to that Australian guy over there, he's got something to do with it. They introduced themselves to me and said, I'm the president of Paddock, and we also are involved with Paramount. We make an in-floor cleaning system called PCC 2000 and by other names, and we've been looking to partner with a one-piece company somewhere in the world for years and never been able to do it. I've gone, why has it not worked? Well, they make their pools and they stack them out there in the paddocks during the winter, and when the summer comes they just want to run them out in the trucks and they don't want to go back and retrofit componentry. No, so my comment was, well, what's it sell for? And at that point of time, which was 17 years ago in the States, it was probably like $5,000, and I reeled in shock and said, but we have suction cleaners that we would retail for $500. Why would we ask someone to pay 10 times the money? And Buzz looked at me and said, yep, you're the same as all those other one-piece guys, and walked off. And he was just disappearing into the crowd in the NSPI, and I thought to myself, did I miss something? I must have just missed something, because this guy is famous. So I follow him, run down the hall, tap him on the shoulder and said, Buzz, did I miss something? And he said, I think you did, son. But here's my card. If you want to visit our centre out there in the back of Phoenix, you know, when the show's finished, come and I'll show you something. And of course, what he showed me was a way to own a pool, a way for a homeowner to own a pool, a way for a pool company to find itself, as he described it, as blue sky in the marketplace. You know, so we took on the Paramount in-floor systems and developed them in conjunction with Paramount over the next several years, and the rest is history. And then we really did go after the after the concrete pool sector. And I think I think Compass has made a pretty big dent in it. In fact, I know we have. And in the last perhaps 5 years, that has taken us into vanishing edges and pool and spa combinations and the various lighting systems. So you're hard pressed these days. I take great pride in this, in fact. If you look at a wall full of Compass Pools photographs, you're very hard pressed to tell what they're made of. Not to be forgotten in the whole story of Compass Pools is that my wife came to work with me on day one. We actually celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary last weekend. So really, 34 of those 40 years, we've gone to work every day together. Literally, we've gone to work together. Of course, we never did the same job. Kerry ran, in the early days, Kerry would have known all the dealers and all the intimate family details, and she wrote the invoices and she collected the money and she paid the bills. And my job was to sort of get the product made and get it on a truck and get it delivered and deal with the logistical issues. And it's still very much that way today. You know, Kerry has her team in the accounts office and she's the chief financial officer, and it's only me that's getting to retire. Kerry is continuing on in her role. I'm happy to pass the banner on to Anthony Cross, who I've worked closely with for the better part of 8 years, knowing that this is where we were heading. My passion over the last 20 years has been aviation. I've been privileged to own and fly all over Australia in a business sense, and I'd be what you'd call now a reasonably mature aviator with a lot of hours in the logbooks. So I look forward to doing a lot more flying. Up to this stage, I haven't had the time to do angel flights, but I'll be undertaking angel flights, which is going out and picking up country folk and bringing them into the city when they have to keep appointments or they've got family members that are sick. And of course I'll still get to fly Anthony Cross around the country to visit the dealers, so that's a win.